Black CEO's mother denied first-class seat. She smiles. Then her son, the airline CEO, walks in. Her weathered hands clutched the first-class ticket her son had sent her. Legitimate, paid for, earned. Yet here she stood, being told to move to economy with a smile that held decades of dignity. Little did they know, that same smile had raised an empire, and its heir was about to walk through those terminal doors. Welcome back, my beautiful souls. I've missed you all so much, and today I have a story that will touch your heart, challenge your perceptions, and remind you of the power of grace under pressure. Before we begin, if you're new here, join our family by hitting that subscribe button. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming. Now get comfortable, because this story is going to change something inside you. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Richard Chen's corner office on the 47th floor of United Airways in headquarters in Chicago. At 52, he stood gazing at the city below, his reflection in the glass showing a man who'd earned every silver strand in his dark hair. His phone buzzed, a message from his mother. "On my way to the airport, son. Thank you for the ticket. Love you." Richard smiled, touching the screen gently. His mother, Patricia Chen, had never flown first class before, despite his countless offers over the years. "It's too much," she'd always say. "Coach is just fine for these old bones." But today was different. Today was her 75th birthday, and she'd finally accepted his gift, a first-class ticket to Chicago, so he could surprise her with the news that would change everything. Across town, Patricia Chen adjusted her neat cream blouse in the cab's mirror. Her silver hair was pulled back in an elegant bun, her makeup subtle but perfect, habits ingrained from 30 years of teaching elementary school in Memphis. The cab driver caught her eye in the rearview mirror. "Special day, ma'am?" "Yes," she smiled, that same gentle smile that had guided countless children through their ABCs. "He must be something special, getting his mama a first-class ticket." Patricia's eyes crinkled with pride. "He is, though he'll always be my little boy who used to fall asleep with Aviation magazine scattered across his bed." Have you ever experienced a moment where someone underestimated you or a loved one? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. Please subscribe to my channel. Thanks. Meanwhile, at Memphis International Airport, Heather Brooks straightened her uniform behind the first-class check-in counter. At 28, she'd worked her way up to senior customer service representative, proud of her ability to spot passengers who didn't belong in first class. Her supervisor had praised her vigilance just last week. The morning rush was beginning, and Heather's eyes narrowed as she saw an elderly black woman approaching, pulling a modest carry-on. Her clothes were nice but not designer, her jewelry simple but elegant. She moved with the unhurried grace of someone who'd spent a lifetime being patient. "Good morning," Patricia said, placing her ID and ticket on the counter. "I'm checking in for the 10:30 to Chicago." Heather's perfectly manicured nails tapped the keyboard. Her eyes flicked from the first-class ticket to Patricia, then back to her screen. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but there seems to be some confusion. This ticket... Are you sure you're meant to be in first class?" Patricia's smile didn't waver, the same smile that had withered far worse in 1960s Memphis. "Yes, dear, my son arranged it." "Perhaps we should double-check your reservation. Economy might be more..." She paused, searching for the right word, "suitable." Patricia's hands folded neatly on the counter, her mother's ring catching the fluorescent light. "The ticket is correct. First class, C2A." The growing line behind Patricia shifted impatiently. Her supervisor, Thomas, approached, his face a mask of professional concern. "Is there a problem here?" "This passenger claims to have a first-class ticket, but there must be some mistake," Heather explained, emphasizing passenger in a way that made Patricia's smile deepen just a fraction. And that's when the automatic doors slid open. Through those sliding doors walked Richard Chen, his commanding presence drawing every eye in the terminal. At 6'2", dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, he moved with the quiet confidence of a man who owned not only the room, but the entire airline. Few recognized him. He'd intentionally kept a low media profile since taking over as CEO 6 months ago. The click of his Italian leather shoes against the terminal floor slowed as he caught sight of his mother at the counter. His heart clenched. He'd planned to surprise her in Chicago, but something in her posture, that familiar, dignified stance she'd worn through every parent-teacher conference, every grocery store slight, every subtle dismissal, told him everything he needed to know. "Mom?" His voice carried across the terminal. Patricia turned, her face illuminating with that smile, the one that had gotten him through advanced calculus, flight school, and his first failed startup. "Richard, I thought I was meeting you in Chicago." Heather's face drained of color as Richard Chen strode forward, his security detail materializing discreetly behind him. She'd seen his photo in the company memo 6 months ago. The new CEO, the youngest CEO in the company's history, the one who turned around 3 failing airlines before taking the helm of United Airways. "I wanted to surprise you in Chicago, but I'm glad I'm here now." He embraced his mother, then turned to the counter. "Is there a problem with my mother's ticket?" Thomas, the supervisor, stepped forward, sweat beading on his forehead. "Mr. Chen, sir, Mom?" Richard looked at Patricia, his expression soft. "Everything okay?" Patricia squeezed his hand. "Nothing I haven't handled before, son." That same gentle smile. "Though I must admit, your timing is impeccable." Richard turned to Heather. He read her name tag. "Miss Brooks, I trust you'll ensure my mother receives the full first-class experience she deserves." After all, his smile matched his mother's, graceful, dignified, powerful. "I designed most of our first-class protocols myself." Heather's hands trembled as she processed Patricia's boarding pass. "Yes, sir. Of course, sir. Mrs. Chen, please accept our deepest apologies." "No apologies needed, dear," Patricia replied, accepting her boarding pass. "Just a reminder that life has a wonderful way of surprising us when we least expect it." She turned to her son. "Though I do hope you'll explain why you're not in Chicago." Richard grinned, looking boyish despite his power suit. "Well, I couldn't let my mom fly alone on her birthday, especially not when I have news to share." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" As they walked toward the first-class lounge, whispers and phones followed their progress. Patricia leaned close to her son. "You didn't have to come." "Yes, I did, Mom. Everything I am started with you, with that smile you taught me to wear even when things weren't fair, with those aviation magazines you bought even when money was tight." He paused at the lounge entrance. "And now I get to tell you first. We're launching a diversity initiative next month, the Patricia Chen Scholarship for Aviation Leadership." Her eyes welled up. "Richard!" "Because every kid deserves a chance to fly, Mom, just like you gave me." Behind them, Heather Brooks watched as mother and son disappeared into the lounge. She looked down at her hands, then at her reflection in the computer screen, seeing herself, really seeing herself, for the first time that day. Would you like to share a time when someone's kindness changed your perspective? Your stories inspire us all. Leave them in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe.
Inside the first-class lounge, Patricia sat across from her son, her hands wrapped around a delicate china teacup. The exclusive space hummed with quiet conversation and subtle glances their way. Richard had just finished telling her about the scholarship program, and her heart felt ready to burst. 10 full scholarships each year, he explained, his eyes bright with purpose, covering everything: tuition, living expenses, flight training, and internships at United Airways. "For children from underserved communities," Patricia added softly, understanding immediately. "For kids like I was, Mom. Kids with dreams bigger than their circumstances." He leaned forward. "And each recipient will get something else, a mentor, someone who believes in them. Like I believed in you, like you believed in me." The moment was interrupted by a commotion at the lounge entrance. Heather Brooks stood there, clutching a folder, her supervisor Thomas trying to dissuade her. Richard noticed his mother's expression shift to one he recognized, the same look she'd worn when one of her students needed help but was afraid to ask. "Let her in," Richard called out. Heather approached their table, her confident demeanor from earlier replaced by genuine remorse. "Mr. Chen, Mrs. Chen, she swallowed hard. "I need to say something." Patricia gestured to the empty chair. "Sit down, dear. You look like you could use some tea." The young woman sank into the chair, placing the folder on the table. "I brought something from our employee database. This is my grandfather. He was a pilot in the 1960s. The photo showed a proud black man in a pilot's uniform, standing beside a small aircraft. Heather's voice cracked. "He never got to fly commercial. They wouldn't let him. He spent his life giving private lessons, dreaming of the day things would be different." She looked up at Richard. "When they announced you as CEO, he cried. He's in a nursing home now, but he follows every article about you." Patricia reached across the table, covering Heather's trembling hand with her own. "Yet today, I became what I hated. I was so focused on proving I belonged in my position that I started keeping others out, just like they kept my grandfather out." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm so ashamed." Richard studied the photo, then looked at his mother. She gave him that slight nod, the one that had always meant, "This is a teaching moment, son." "Miss Brooks, what's your grandfather's name?" James Brooks." Richard pulled out his phone, typing quickly. "James Brooks, first recipient of the Patricia Chen Lifetime Achievement Award in Aviation Excellence." He looked up. "Think he'd be willing to speak at our scholarship launch next month?" Heather's eyes widened. After what I did?" Patricia's gentle smile returned. "Dear, the measure of a person isn't in never making mistakes. It's in what they do after they realize they've made one." "Mom's right," Richard added. "Change doesn't happen in grand gestures alone. It happens in small moments when people choose to be better than they were yesterday." He gestured to the photo. "Your grandfather's story deserves to be heard, and you deserve a chance to honor his legacy properly." The lounge fell silent as Heather broke down, years of inherited pain and personal shame pouring out. Patricia moved to sit beside her, offering the same comfort she'd given countless students over the years. "I'd like to meet him," Patricia said softly. "Your grandfather. Perhaps we could all have dinner together when I returned from Chicago." Richard watched his mother comfort the young woman who just an hour ago had tried to deny her a seat. In that moment, he saw everything that had made him who he was: his mother's capacity for forgiveness, her ability to turn moments of prejudice into opportunities for growth, her unwavering belief that love was always the answer. What generational dreams are you carrying? Share your story of family legacy in the comments below. The news spread through United Airways like wildfire. By the time Richard and Patricia boarded their flight to Chicago, social media was already buzzing with shaky smartphone videos of their exchange at check-in. Hashtag Chen CEO and hashtag First Class Kindness were trending. In seat 2A, Patricia watched her son struggle with the attention. He kept checking his phone, his jaw tightening with each notification. "The board's concerned," he finally admitted, lowering his voice. "They think the video makes us look bad. They're worried about stock prices." "And what do you think?" Patricia asked, though she already knew the answer from the way he was gripping his armrest. "I think—" He paused as a flight attendant approached, then retreated after recognizing him. "I think they're missing the point. This isn't about bad publicity. It's about real change." "But change makes people uncomfortable," Patricia observed, adjusting her reading glasses. "Especially people with something to lose." The plane was still at the gate when Richard's phone rang. Bradford Wellington III, the board chairman. Richard excused himself to take the call in the galley. "Jen, we need to get ahead of this," Wellington's voice crackled through the phone. "Release a statement saying it was all a misunderstanding. Say the employee was new, untrained. We'll promote her, give her a raise, whatever it takes." Richard pinched the bridge of his nose. Brad, that would be lying. It's PR management. Look, I backed you for CEO because you understand business. Don't let some viral moment derail everything we've built. Everything we've built, Richard repeated slowly, includes a responsibility to do better. Don't go soft on me now, Chen. You're not just some diversity hire son anymore. You're the face of this airline. Richard felt the old, familiar heat rise in his chest, the same burn he'd felt in boarding school, in college, in every boardroom where he'd been the exception. He glanced back at his mother, calmly reading her book in first class, and drew strength from her posture. You're right, Brad. I am the face of this airline, which is exactly why I'm launching the scholarship program today instead of next month. Richard, and I'm doing it from Chicago. Live stream. My mother will help me present it. His voice hardened. Unless the board wants to explain to our shareholders why they're opposing an initiative to bring fresh talent into an industry desperate for qualified personnel? The silence on the other end was deafening. Back in his seat, Richard found his mother watching him with knowing eyes. The board's not happy? They'll survive, he said. Then noticed her expression. What? You're doing that thing with your tie. You only do that when you're second-guessing yourself. His hands fell away from his silk tie. Even at 52, she could read him like one of her elementary school students. Mom, what if they're right? What if I'm letting emotion cloud my judgment? Everything I've worked for? Stop right there, Patricia interrupted, her teacher voice making several nearby passengers sit straighter reflexively. Everything you've worked for was never just about you. Remember what you told me when you got your first pilot's license? One day, Mom, kids like me won't have to be the exception. Exactly. Now, tell me about this live stream. And don't think I didn't notice you volunteering me without asking. As the plane began its taxi, Richard outlined his plans, his mother adding suggestions from her years of teaching. Neither noticed the flight attendant, Jenny Martinez, listening intently while pretending to check seatbelts. She thought about her own daughter, who dreamed of becoming a pilot but couldn't afford flight school. When she reached the galley, Jenny pulled out her phone, quickly typing a message to her daughter. Mamita, I think things are about to change. Look up Patricia Chen scholarship. 30 minutes into the flight to Chicago, the unexpected happened. Captain Rogers' voice crackled over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some turbulence due to a weather system. We'll need to make an unscheduled landing in Nashville. Please remain seated. Richard immediately tensed, recognizing the strain in the captain's voice. This wasn't just routine turbulence. His pilot's training told him something else was wrong. Within moments, his phone buzzed with an urgent text from operations. The real issue, a mechanical concern with one of the engines. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to require immediate attention. As CEO, he needed to handle this crisis, but as a son, he didn't want to worry his mother. But Patricia had spent decades reading between lines. Go, she said simply. Do what you need to do. The next 3 hours in Nashville International Airport became an unexpected crucible of change. The first-class lounge was packed with delayed passengers, including some familiar faces from their original check-in at Memphis. Heather Brooks's earlier interaction with Patricia had gone viral, and now passengers were not so subtly filming the CEO's mother. Patricia found herself sharing a corner with Jenny Martinez, the flight attendant who'd been quietly attentive during their brief flight. Jenny's hands were shaking as she checked her phone. My daughter, she explained, showing Patricia a text thread. She's watching the scholarship announcement hashtag. She wants to be a pilot, but... She trailed off, embarrassed. But the cost seems impossible, Patricia finished. I remember those days. Richard would calculate how many years of my teaching salary it would take to afford flight school. He was good at math, but those numbers... She shook her head. Sometimes the size of a dream can feel overwhelming. Across the lounge, Richard was dealing with a conference call with the board, engineering, and PR simultaneously. His voice carried occasionally. "No, we're not hiding the mechanical issue. Yes, full transparency. I don't care about the stock dip. I care about safety." Ginny watched him with growing respect. "He's different from other executives I've worked with." "He remembers what it's like to be on the other side," Patricia said, "to be the one looking up at what seems impossible." Their conversation was interrupted by an elderly man approaching their table, leaning heavily on a cane. "Mrs. Chen," his voice quavered, "I was on the Memphis flight. I saw what happened at check-in." Patricia gestured to an empty chair. "Please join us." "Name's Dr. William Foster, retired now, but I used to be Dean of Aviation at Tennessee State University." He settled into the chair with a grunt. "What your son's doing with this scholarship, it's what we tried to do for years, but never had the funding or corporate support." "Tell me more." Patricia leaned forward, teacher mode engaging automatically. As Dr. Foster shared stories of promising students who had to abandon their dreams due to financial constraints, a small crowd gathered around their table. A former Air Force mechanic shared how she'd faced discrimination in the 1980s. A young Indian-American student talked about his struggles to convince his parents that aviation was a respectable career. Richard, finished with his calls, stood back and watched as his mother did what she'd done for 40 years in her classroom. Created a safe space for people to share their stories, their dreams, and their pain. Jenny's phone buzzed again. Her daughter had started a new hashtag. Hashtag Chen's Changing Skies. It was already gaining traction. "Mr. Chen, I know this delay is a crisis, but look what's happening." Richard watched as his mother orchestrated an impromptu aviation education symposium in the middle of a first-class lounge. Dr. Foster was drawing flight patterns on a napkin for the Indian-American student. The former mechanic was exchanging contact information with two young women in business suits. "Sometimes a delay isn't a crisis. It's an opportunity," Richard said quietly. His phone buzzed. Another angry message from Bradford Wellington III about stock prices and PR nightmares. He silenced it without reading further. Some things are more important than quarterly reports. Have you ever had an unexpected delay turn into a meaningful moment? Share your story of when life's interruptions became opportunities. As the Nashville delay stretched into its fourth hour, Patricia excused herself from the growing community in the lounge and walked to the window. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, reminding her of another sunset, 35 years ago. Richard found her there, tears glistening in her eyes. "Mom, what is it?" "I never told you about the day your father died," she said softly. "The whole story, I mean."
Richard stiffened. His father's death in a small plane crash had always been a sensitive subject. He'd been 17, already deep into his flight training. "Mom, you don't have to. I think it's time you knew." She pressed her hand against the cool glass. "That day, before the accident, your father had a meeting. An airline was considering him for their pilot training program, first black pilot they were going to admit." Richard's breath caught. "What?" "The meeting went well. Too well." Patricia's voice carried decades of controlled pain. "Some of the other candidates followed him to the airfield. They'd tampered with his plane." The world seemed to tilt under Richard's feet. "The investigation said it was mechanical failure." That's what they wrote down. Small town Alabama, 1988. Nobody was going to investigate further. She turned to face her son. "That's why I was so scared when you said you wanted to fly. But then I saw your face when you watched planes take off. You had his eyes, his dream. I couldn't let fear win. Couldn't let them win." Across the lounge, Jenny Martinez was discreetly wiping tears. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but the story carried to where she was arranging coffee for the passengers. "The scholarship program?" Richard said hoarsely. "That's why you insisted on being involved in the selection process. Someone needs to watch out for them, son. The dreamers. The ones who look at the sky and see possibility instead of limits." She straightened her shoulders. "Your father used to say, the sky belongs to everyone. We just have to be brave enough to claim our piece of it." Dr. Foster approached slowly, his cane tapping softly on the carpet. "Gerald Chen," he said quietly. "I remember him. He applied to our program, too. Brilliant man." Patricia nodded. "You knew him?" "Knew of him. His application was one of the best I'd ever seen. When we heard about the accident..." The old dean shook his head. "Some of us suspected, but in those days..." "In those days," Patricia echoed, "silence felt safer than truth." Richard's phone buzzed again. Bradford Wellington was demanding an immediate board meeting about the viral situation. Richard looked at the message, then at his mother, and made a decision. "Jenny, could you help me set up a video call? I think it's time the board met my father." The next 30 minutes transformed the first-class lounge into an impromptu broadcast studio. Richard stood before his laptop, his mother beside him, addressing the emergency board meeting with a strength that came from generations of unspoken truth. "Gentlemen," he began, "today we're not just launching a scholarship program. We're correcting a historical wrong. My father, Gerald Chen, should have been one of your pilots 35 years ago. His dream died on a sabotaged runway in Alabama. But dreams don't end with one generation." As Richard spoke, Patricia noticed Heather Brooks slip quietly into the lounge. The young woman's eyes were red from crying, and she clutched a folder to her chest. "Mr. Chen," Heather interrupted softly, "I found something in the archives during our delay. Your father, he didn't just apply to one airline. He applied to all of them, including ours. And..." She swallowed hard. "I found his rejection letter. The date... It was the day before. The day before they killed him," Patricia finished, her voice steady, "because he dared to fly." Richard looked at the board members on his screen, their faces a mix of discomfort and dawning understanding. This scholarship isn't about PR. It's not about stock prices or viral videos. It's about making sure no other parent has to choose between their child's dreams and their safety. No other mother has to watch her son fight the same battles his father died fighting. Bradford Wellington's face filled the screen. "Chen, For once, the chairman seemed at a loss for words. "I don't want your apology, Brad. I want your support. Full funding, full commitment. Because the next Gerald Chen is out there right now, looking at the sky. And this time, we're going to make sure they reach it." The board's unanimous vote in favor of fully funding the scholarship program, now renamed the Gerald and Patricia Chen Aviation Initiative, marked a turning point. As the Nashville delay continued into the evening, the first-class lounge transformed into something remarkable. Dr. Foster had called some of his former students, now successful pilots and aviation professionals who lived in the Nashville area. They began arriving, drawn by the chance to be part of this historic moment. The lounge filled with stories, laughter, and an electric sense of possibility. Patricia found herself at the center of an impromptu mentoring session. Jenny's daughter had FaceTimed in, along with dozens of other aspiring aviators who'd been following the trending story. Young faces filled phones and tablets around the lounge, eager to learn, to share, to belong. "Mrs. Chen," a young voice called from one of the screens, "how did you handle the fear when your son wanted to fly after what happened to his father?" Patricia looked across the room at Richard, who was deep in conversation with a group of veteran pilots. Love is stronger than fear. And dreams have a way of coming back stronger in our children. Heather Brooks, who had been quietly helping organize the impromptu gathering, suddenly spoke up. "I have someone who wants to join us." She turned her tablet around to reveal an elderly black man in a nursing home room wearing a pilot's cap. "Grandpa," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "meet Mrs. Chen." James Brooks's weathered face broke into a smile that carried decades of unspoken understanding. "Ma'am, your husband's story, we all knew about it. We carried it in our cockpits, in our hearts."
"You flew?" Patricia asked gently. "Crop dusters, mostly. Private lessons when they'd let me. Wasn't what I dreamed of, but—" He straightened in his wheelchair, pride evident in his bearing. "I kept my piece of sky." Richard joined them, pulling up a chair beside his mother. "Mr. Brooks, how would you like to help us design the mentorship component of the initiative? We need people who understand both the dream and the obstacles." The old pilot's eyes welled up. "You'd want my input?" "Sir," he leaned forward, "we need your wisdom, all of it, the good and the hard. These kids need to know both the dream and the cost, and how to navigate them." As they talked, Jenny Martinez slipped away to take another call from her daughter. When she returned, she was crying. "Maria just got her acceptance letter to the aviation program at Embry-Riddle. She was going to turn it down because we couldn't afford it, but now—" Patricia took Jenny's hands in hers. "Now she flies." The next few hours passed in a blur of connections and conversations. Dr. Foster and James Brooks, via video, began outlining a comprehensive mentorship structure. Current pilots shared their personal stories of triumph and challenge. Young aspirants asked questions that would have been too painful or awkward in other settings. Richard watched his mother move through it all with grace, her earlier pain transformed into purpose. She had become more than a CEO's mother or a teacher. She was emerging as a symbol of resilience and hope. Bradford Wellington called again, but this time with a different tone. "Chen, the engagement metrics on this delay are unprecedented. But more importantly, my granddaughter just asked me why there aren't more female pilots. I didn't have a good answer." "Bring her to the launch event," Richard replied. "Let her meet some. Better yet, let her meet my mother." As night fell over Nashville, the mechanical issues were finally resolved. But something more had been fixed in those hours of forced proximity. Barriers had fallen, stories had been shared, dreams had been rekindled. Patricia stood at the window again, watching the ground crew prepare their plane. Richard joined her, slipping an arm around her shoulders. "Dad would be proud," he said softly, "of both of us." She leaned into her son's embrace. "He's proud, baby. He's in every pilot who breaks through, every dream that takes flight. And now his story has wings. What family legacy are you building? What dreams are you keeping alive for the next generation? Share your story of generational hope." The flight to Chicago resumed under a star-filled sky, but dark clouds were gathering in the digital sphere. As passengers settled back into their seats, Bradford Wellington called one final time, his voice tight with concern. "Chen, we have a situation. Someone leaked your father's accident report, the original one, the one that blamed him for the crash." Richard felt his mother stiffen beside him. On his phone screen, headlines were already spreading. Chen Airlines tragedy, CEO's father's fatal error. Questions arise about Gerald Chen's final flight. Aviation expert questions new scholarship's namesake. "They're trying to discredit him," Richard said quietly, "to discredit all of this." Patricia touched his arm. "Richard, don't."
but he was already unbuckling his seatbelt, heading toward the galley to take the call privately. Jenny Martinez watched him go, recognizing the same tension she'd seen in his shoulders during their delayed stay in Nashville. In the galley, Richard's composure finally cracked. "Who leaked it, Brad?" "That's the thing. It came from inside. Someone on the board." The betrayal hit hard. Richard had known there was resistance to the scholarship program, but this was different. This was personal. "Douglas," Richard said flatly. "It was Douglas Carter III, whose father was on the board when Gerald Chen applied for the airline, whose family helped bury the truth about the sabotage." "He's calling for an emergency board meeting," Wellington continued, claiming the scholarship program needs further review in light of historical concerns. Richard's hand clenched around his phone. "He's using my father's murder to protect his father's lies." "Richard, listen." But Richard had already ended the call. His hands were shaking as he pulled up the accident report on his phone. The familiar words blurred before his eyes. Pilot error, excessive risk-taking, poor judgment. He didn't hear his mother approach until she spoke. "I remember when you first found that report," she said softly. "You were 18, just got your pilot's license. I wanted to quit flying, thought maybe they were right about us, about him. But you didn't quit, because you showed me his logbooks, his perfect record, his dream. And now they're trying to kill his dream again." Patricia's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Let them try." But the damage was spreading. #Chen cover-up was trending. Aviation forums were filling with debates about the scholarship program's political agenda. Even some of their supporters from Nashville were going quiet, unsure how to handle the controversy. Jenny approached cautiously with a tablet. "Mr. Chen, my daughter Maria is trying to reach you. All the scholarship applicants are. They're scared." On the screen, dozens of hopeful faces waited in a group video chat. Maria Martinez's voice came through clearly. "Mr. Chen, they're saying we don't deserve this chance, that we're just a PR stunt." Richard stared at the screen, at all those hopeful faces now clouded with doubt. He saw his father in each of them, every dream, every possibility, every future that fear and hatred had tried to ground. The plane hit turbulence, a perfect metaphor for the moment. In the main cabin, passengers were checking their phones, whispering, looking at Patricia with new uncertainty.
"Mom," Richard's voice cracked. "Everything we built today, they're destroying it with one leaked document." Patricia Chen stood in the airplane galley, her son's pain reflecting her own. But her smile, that same smile that had faced down prejudice at the check-in counter, never wavered. "No, baby," she said firmly. "They're just giving us a chance to tell the truth. All of it, finally." She took the tablet from Jenny, looking at all those young faces waiting for answers. "Children," she said, her teacher's voice carrying decades of strength, "let me tell you about a man who loved the sky so much he died trying to reach it, and about the people who tried to keep that sky for themselves. The truth, so long buried, was about to take flight." Have you ever faced a moment when your dreams seemed to crash around you? How did you find the strength to keep going? Share your story of resilience. At 37,000 feet, somewhere between Nashville and Chicago, Richard Chen faced the biggest decision of his career. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from the board, PR teams, and journalists. Douglas Carter III had called an emergency press conference for the morning. But in the galley of Flight UA-1988, the flight number a coincidence that felt like fate, Richard watched his mother do what she'd done for 40 years, teach truth to those ready to learn. Through Jenny's tablet, Patricia spoke to the scared scholarship applicants. "In 1988, your dreams could get you killed. They thought fear would keep us grounded.
But they didn't understand something fundamental about dreams. They're like air currents. You can't see them, but they're strong enough to lift steel into the sky. Richard made his decision. "Jenny," he said quietly, "can you patch me into the plane's communication system and keep that video call running?" As Jenny worked, Richard pulled up his email and began to type. "To the United Airways Board of Directors, I tender my resignation as CEO effective immediately after this flight, unless 1. Douglas Carter III resigns by morning. 2. The full, unredacted investigation into my father's death is released to the media. 3. The Gerald and Patricia Chen Aviation Initiative receives guaranteed funding for 50 years. My father's death was not an accident. It was a message. Tonight, I'm sending one back. Richard Chen." He hit send. Patricia watched her son, recognizing the set of his jaw, his father's determination written across his face. "Richard!" "Mom, I need you to listen." He took her hands in his. "For 35 years, you've carried this burden alone, protected me, guided me. But now," he squeezed her hands, "now it's my turn to protect his legacy, our legacy." The plane's intercom crackled to life. Richard's voice filled the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Richard Chen, CEO of United Airways. Tonight, you're part of a moment that's been 35 years in the making." In the main cabin, passengers lowered their phones, listening. "In 1988, my father, Gerald Chen, died because he dared to fly commercial aircraft. Tonight, someone leaked the falsified report that blamed him for his own death. They thought it would ground our new scholarship program. Instead, it's given us wings." Through Jenny's tablet, the young scholarship applicants watched in awe as Richard continued. "To every young person who's ever looked up at the sky and been told it wasn't meant for you, it is. To every parent who's ever had to choose between their child's dreams and their safety, those days are over. To everyone who's ever been told to wait their turn, to know their place, to stay grounded, the sky belongs to all of us." Patricia's eyes filled with tears as her son's voice gained strength. "I've just sent my resignation to the board. They have until we land to choose truth or consequences. But to all of you watching, especially our scholarship applicants, know this. Whether I'm CEO tomorrow or not, your dreams will fly." Bradford Wellington's name flashed on Richard's phone. He ignored it. "My mother taught me that education isn't just about learning facts, it's about learning truth. So here's the truth. 35 years ago, they killed my father's dream. Tonight, we're bringing it back to life, through each of you." The cabin erupted in applause. Through the tablet, Maria Martinez and the other applicants were crying, cheering. Heather Brooks, who had been quietly listening, stood up. "Mr. Chen, my grandfather wants to say something." James Brooks's weathered face filled the screen, his pilot's cap still proudly worn. "Son, my father and I trained together once, just one day at a small airfield. He told me something I never forgot. The sky doesn't care what color you are, what gender you are, where you come from. It just asks if you have the courage to reach it." Richard looked at his mother, saw her nod of confirmation. Gerald's words coming back after all these years. His phone buzzed again. Bradford Wellington had sent a text. "Carter's resignation received. Full investigation files released to the media. Board votes unanimously to fund initiative in perpetuity. Please don't resign. We need you. The sky needs you." What would you risk everything for? What truth would make you stand up, speak out, and refuse to back down? Share your moment of courage.
As Flight UA-1988 began its descent into Chicago, the sky painted itself in pre-dawn purples and golds. Patricia Chen stood at the galley window, watching the city lights emerge through the breaking darkness. Behind her, the cabin hummed with energy, passengers sharing stories, scholarship applicants still connected through various devices, all part of a moment that felt like dawn in more ways than one. Richard joined his mother at the window, showing her Bradford's message. "Mom, we did it." She touched the window gently. "No, baby, your father did it. His dream just needed time to find its wings." The pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Sarah Rodriguez. We're beginning our final approach into Chicago O'Hare. And, Mr. Chen, Mrs. Chen, it's an honor to be flying Gerald's family home."
As they took their seats, Jenny Martinez approached with tears in her eyes. "My daughter Maria, she wants to know if the scholarship application deadline is still next month." Patricia smiled. "Tell her to submit it today, and tell her to write about this flight in her essay." The landing was perfect, smooth as hope. As the plane taxied to the gate, Richard noticed something through his window, a line of aircraft, their lights blinking in the dawn. Captain Rodriguez's voice returned. "Mr. Chen, look outside. Every United pilot on the ground. They're giving your father a water cannon salute." Twin arcs of water rose over their aircraft, catching the rising sun, creating rainbows. Through the tablets and phones still connecting everyone, they could hear James Brooks singing softly, an old spiritual about rising on wings of morning. The cabin broke into spontaneous applause as Patricia finally let her tears fall freely. "Gerald, look what your dream built." As passengers began to deplane, Richard stood to address them one final time. "Thank you all for being part of this journey. The Gerald and Patricia Chen Aviation Initiative launches officially today. But more importantly, something else takes flight. Truth, long buried, finally reaching the sky." Heather Brooks, who had been quiet since Nashville, suddenly spoke up. "Mr. Chen, the airline's archives, they still have your father's original application, his ID photo. I thought maybe it should be displayed in the corporate headquarters, next to yours." "No," Richard said softly, "not next to mine. In the new scholarship center we're building, where every dreamer can see it and know this is what courage looks like." The terminal was packed when they finally deplaned. News crews, airline staff, and a crowd of local aviation students all waited. But what made Patricia stop in her tracks was the line of pilots, dozens of them, in full uniform, standing at attention. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. "Mrs. Chen, 35 years ago, they tried to keep us grounded. Today, we fly. Every one of us carries Gerald's dream in our wings." Bradford Wellington pushed through the crowd, looking somewhat rumpled but determined. "The press conference starts in an hour. Douglas Carter III's resignation is public. The full investigation files are being released. And this," he handed Patricia an envelope, "is the first official acceptance letter for the scholarship program. I thought you should be the one to present it." Patricia opened the envelope, read the name, and smiled through her tears. "Maria Martinez," she read aloud. Jenny gasped as her daughter's face appeared on the terminal's big screen live from home, crying and laughing at once. "I told you, didn't I? Now you fly." Patricia watched her mother hand the acceptance letter to Jenny, saw the tears and hugs and joy rippling through the crowd. Somewhere in the terminal, James Brooks's voice could be heard leading a growing chorus of "Rise Up, O Wings of Morning." A young reporter pushed forward. "Mr. Chen, what happens now?" Richard looked at his mother, who nodded, that same gentle, powerful smile on her face. Now we keep his promise.
The sky belongs to everyone brave enough to reach for it, and we're just getting started." As the sun rose fully over Chicago, Patricia Chen stood among the pilots, her son beside her, watching a new generation prepare to take flight. Gerald's dream, no longer grounded by fear or hatred, had finally found its wings. And somewhere high above, she could almost hear him whisper, "Fly, baby, fly." What dreams are you helping take flight? Share your story of lifting others up and watching them soar. 1 year later, the Gerald and Patricia Chen Aviation Center stands gleaming in the Chicago sunlight, its glass walls reflecting the sky. Inside the main atrium, a wall of photographs tells a story. Gerald Chen's original airline application photo at the center, surrounded by the faces of the first 100 scholarship recipients. Maria Martinez, now in her second semester of flight training, leads tours through the building. She always stops at Gerald's photo, telling visitors, "This is where dreams learn to fly again." The changes rippled far beyond United Airways. Other airlines launched similar initiatives. Heather Brooks now heads the company's new division of inclusive aviation, working alongside her grandfather James, whose oral histories of Black aviation pioneers form the cornerstone of their training program. Patricia Chen still teaches, but now in a different way. Every month, she hosts Sky Stories, gatherings where aspiring aviators meet veterans of the industry. The sessions always end with her signature question, "What piece of sky will you claim?" Richard Chen remains CEO, but his leadership style has transformed the industry. The viral video of that fateful flight became a Harvard Business School case study in corporate courage, but more importantly, it became a beacon of hope. Today, in the center's atrium, Patricia stands beside a new installation, a piece of twisted metal recovered from Gerald's crash, now transformed into a sculpture of rising wings. Beside it, a simple plaque reads, "To those who dared to dream, those who kept dreams alive, and those who now take flight. The sky remembers." Gerald Chen, 1988. A group of young scholarship recipients gathers around her, their pilot trainee uniforms crisp and proud. One asks, "Mrs. Chen, do you think he knows what his dream built?" Patricia touches the sculpture gently, her smile radiant as ever. "Every time I hear engines roar to life, every time I see young faces look up at the sky without fear, every time another dream takes flight." She pauses, watching a united plane soar overhead through the glass ceiling. Yes, he knows. He's in every wing that rises, every dream that soars. Behind her, Richard adjusts his father's old pilot's cap, now permanently displayed next to the sculpture. "Mom," he says softly, "it's time for the graduation ceremony. Maria's giving the keynote." Patricia nods, turning to the gathered students. "Remember, children, the sky has no limits, only horizons waiting to be reached."
As they walked toward the ceremony hall, Jenny Martinez, now United's Director of Future Aviators Program, falls into step beside them. "You know what Maria's speech is about?" she asks, beaming. She's titled it, "The Smile That Changed Everything." Patricia's eyes sparkle. "No," she says, linking arms with her son. "It was love that changed everything. The smile just gave it wings." Above them, through the atrium's glass ceiling, planes trace their paths across the endless blue, carrying countless dreams ever higher, ever forward, ever free. What legacy will your smile, your courage, your love leave behind? Share your dreams of tomorrow. The end.